Welcome to Catching Up with Council. I'm your host, Dan Monroe. Joining me today is Ward 16 Councilman Brian Kazy. Councilman Kazy, thank you for joining me today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So take me back. When did you first get elected to council?
So I first got elected in 2015. I received the appointment in January 2015. Then I had to run that November and was elected in 2015. Was elected 2017. Was elected in 2021.
So you're on your third term as councilman?
Yes, third term.
Think back to the beginning to now. How have you grown? How have you changed as a councilman? And how do you see your job?
So the very first thing that I had to learn when I became a councilman was patience, right? I tend to be an individual who just likes to get things done and just get them done quickly, right? And then I get on Cleveland City Council and I realize that the pace of the city isn't going to run with me. I have to run with the pace of the city. So patience was one of the biggest things that I had to learn when I got on council, and how to figure out how to get things done and maneuvering through the system at Cleveland City Hall. And there's a different challenge every single day when you're on Cleveland City Council, be through something that's happening at the city or something happening in the ward with a constituent, whatever it is. You have to be ready to adjust on the fly. And having served under the Jackson administration and now under the Bibb administration, it's almost like you get rejuvenated, right? Regenerated, because you were used to a certain way. You know, you were used to the city running a certain way. You're used to being able to get things done a certain way. And then when a new administration comes in, it's all new, right? So we all have to learn on the fly. So learning on the fly and adjusting and is one of the things that keeps you on your toes as a councilman.
You know, I've talked to several of your colleagues. You know, when they start, a lot of being a council person is the phone calls you get. Now, when you first started that freshman year, were you prepared for the amount of calls you get, or was that a bit overwhelming? And how'd you deal with all that?
I prepared myself pretty well for the job. Through things that I had done with the community and working with the council prior to becoming a member of Cleveland City Council. So I really knew what it was entailed, but it is comical because so many members have come in after me. I'm the third senior member of Cleveland City Council now, and just about all of them say the same thing. And it's like, I didn't expect, the job to entail as much as it does. And it does entail a lot. But I love the phone calls. I'm a council person that wants my residents to call me. I want to be able to help them. I want to be able to help them navigate through the system. For me, the phone calls aren't overwhelming, and I welcome them for my residents.
All right. So you're also now the chairman of the Utilities Committee. What is that, and what is the role of that committee? So
there's three aspects more than three aspects, but three major aspects to the Utilities Committee is Cleveland Public Power. We have oversight of Cleveland Public Power, water pollution control, and the Division of Water. And for me, the Utilities Committee is probably, aside from Finance, the most important committee that the City Council oversees. And that is because not only do we have a municipally owned electric company, but we also have the country's 8th largest water system. And it's the only entity within the city of Cleveland that touches you on a daily basis, right? So when you get up in the morning and you turn those lights on, it touches a Cleveland resident. You turn that faucet on, you go to take a shower, you flush a toilet, whatever it is, that's an entity of the city of Cleveland touching it. So it's the only committee that actually touches residents on a daily basis, every single day. And it also, aside from Finance, has the most money that runs through that committee, right? So it's a large committee. There's a lot of responsibility, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Well, with that committee, what are some of the challenges you're seeing this year, and what are some of the goals that you're working to achieve with your committee?
So obviously, it depends on which entity you're talking about within that, but we can go with Cleveland Public Power, and Our biggest obstacle in Cleveland Public Power is public perception, right? I mean, nobody ever writes a good story about Cleveland Public Power, right? We're up against, an entity that's always been fighting us for over 100 years, and they're beloved by the media, right? Cleveland Public Power is not beloved by the media. Although we're just as good as any other electric company that services the city of Cleveland, there's that public perception that people are always going after Cleveland Public Power. Some of the things that we look forward to is we're waiting on a facilities assessment for Cleveland Public Power, which is going to set the future for Cleveland Public Power. And we have goals of eventually expanding Cleveland Public Power, no time soon, but in the future, to service the whole city of Cleveland, which is going to be an exciting thing. And it's going to be a huge endeavor, but it's going to take a lot of hard work and dedication as well. With water, a lot of things get done in water that people don't see, right? All you see is a street tore up and then it goes away, right? So a lot of water is infrastructure, and those are very expensive things. Mm-hmm. But there's nothing better than knowing that there's a big cracked main somewhere, right? And you know that it services 200 people. Right, and then we're able to go in there and fix it, and know that the way we're going to fix it, that pipe is going to last for another 150, 200 years, and not only the people that it's servicing now, but the people in long after we're not here are going to be serviced as well.
Now, I understand within the Utilities Committee, the committee is also going to be over any citywide plan for broadband internet. Where are we with that, and how's that proceeding?
Well, in 2021, Cleveland City Council allocated $20 million in ARPA funds for broadband expansion for the whole city. So in 2022, it went out for an RFP. All of the RFPs are currently back with the administration. I believe we got 11 of them back to be able to service the whole city with broadband. And hopefully within the next month, they'll have the 11 whittled down to 3. And then the administration will choose somebody that will provide this service to the rest of the city. So we're hoping by the end of the year, we have an entity in place, a company in place who we're going to start working with to close that digital divide in the city of Cleveland.
Very, very interesting. I have to keep watching on that. Now, speaking of utilities, you backed a resolution. You created a resolution to remove the First Energy name from the Brown Stadium. I've been at those council meetings. You're very passionate about this. Tell me about this.
Well, first of all, because the stadium is the largest owned municipal building, and when you drive by it, people think that it's First Energy Stadium, and it's not First Energy Stadium. It's the City of Cleveland Stadium, who just happens to have the name First Energy on it. Now, I wouldn't have an issue with naming rights, because the naming rights is $8 million a year that goes to the ownership of the Cleveland Browns. The city does not see any of that revenue. And knowing that First Energy is a company that employs a lot of good, decent people, and they're people on the ground, and they're poll workers, and the people who help keep the electric on are good, hardworking individuals. But they're as corrupt as the day is long at the top, right? Knowing with House Bill 6, with the scandal with trying to pay off politicians, with just everything that went on there. It's just not a good look for the city of Cleveland to associate ourselves with something so corrupt from the top up. And I just don't believe that name should be on that stadium anymore, knowing that they're behind trying to bribe individuals to get what they want, knowing that they're trying, to buy their way through the State House. The name is tainted, in my opinion, and I don't think that that's a representation of the city of Cleveland, and it's not how we work here at the local level, and that may be at the state level, but there's no way, shape, or form that should be any type of tag that the city of Cleveland has.
One thing I liked about it too is I remember when that scandal came out in the press, and then all of a sudden it seemed like it was there, and then it went away. You didn't hear much about it. So I like this resolution because it's also a reminder that this happened.
And it's not over.
Yeah, it's still going on.
Right? And if you kind of are, and I don't know how well you're following it, but if you are following it the way that I'm following it, and you're relating it to the Cleveland Browns, and you're relating it, who I have my own issues with because they think that First Energy is a good community partner and I don't, whatever. But some of these trials that are forthcoming on this House Bill 6 scandal will kind of coincide with the playoffs in football, right? So hopefully we have a football team that's going to make the playoffs. But what happens if we've got a trial starting in the First Energy scandal and a playoff game happening at the same time, and all of a sudden we've got this scandalous situation playing in a stadium that's got the naming rights to that? It's not good for the city of Cleveland.
It just doesn't mix.
No.
It just doesn't work.
Not at all.
Let's move on now. Let's look at your ward, the Great Ward 16. Tell me about the communities that make up your ward.
So I represent the neighborhoods of Jefferson, Bel Air, Puritas, Longmead, which all encompass the section of the city that people are tagged West Park. So I represent half of West Park.
And I understand your ward is seeing some new housing going on. How's that going?
Yeah,
Is it still progressing?
We haven't had a new home built in Ward 16 since the early 90s. Now, we did have a development for some townhouses in 2002, but housing is not something that was in the forefront of Ward 16 because we're stable, right? We don't have a lot of vacant land up there. We don't have empty lots. But what we do need is we just need a little bit of a kickstart, right? So we have this past year, 2020, we had 2 private investors build 2 new homes in the ward. And now we're getting ready to do a 46-unit apartment. We're redoing Nathaniel Hawthorne School, which is a former CMSD school that sits at 130th and Lorraine. So that was sold, and 46 market rate apartments will be going in there. And then also we've partnered with Habitat for Humanity to take a vacant, another old school, which was torn down in 1979 or 80, depending on who you talk to. And that's property's been sitting vacant for all these years, and Habitat's coming in and putting 5 new houses in that. And that's going to aesthetically change the whole look of a certain section of the ward where these 5 new homes are coming in.
What does that say to the ward then in terms of growth with these new houses? It shows for a healthy community.
Yeah, and what it shows is that there's private investment coming in for people outside our ward, see how safe and affordable the neighborhood is, and they want to be there. And it just reiterates to the residents who've been there forever, because we have one of the longest home ownerships in the city, that we're still a good place to be.
Well, it is a great place to be. And one thing I know about Ward 16 is you have some beautiful parks. Talk about some parks are being renovated, some parks that have been renovated. Talk about that plan right there.
So within Ward 16, we have 7 parks. We have McGowan, Crossburn, Gilmore, Emory, Terminal, Jefferson, and Mohican. And since 2015, Ward 16, let me preface it by this. We have no city-owned facility building in Ward 16. So the only thing that we have there connecting us to the city is our parks. And that's why when I got on council, I decided that I really wanted to put a lot of time and attention into our parks. So since 2015, we've been renovating in some fashion a different park every year. We just redid Crossburn Park. It was a $400,000 rehab with all new playground equipment, some of it ADA accessible. We redid the tennis courts. We redid the basketball courts. And next year we're redoing the playground equipment at Mohican Park at the tune of $500,000. We've already put a half basketball court at Mohican Park. So we spend a lot of time and attention. We do a lot of community events, and we utilize our parks pretty much year round in Ward 16.
Now, speaking of Jefferson Park, now I know that there's been some serious issues going on in and around Jefferson Park. Tell me a bit about that and what you're doing to change the perception of that park.
So, not so much that we needed to change the perception of the park, but we did have a snafu, 2 snafus at the park where we had 2 unfortunate events that happened relatively close to each other, where 2 individuals lost their lives to gun violence. And that wasn't the norm at Jefferson Park, right? So we had a decision to make. So what it was we had the basketball courts, and right before the first incident occurred, we could almost see the tension building in the park, right? And I tried working with the administration. I tried working with the police to say somehow this is getting too big for our park. And what was happening was, we had 4 courts up there, or 4 hoops up there, and any given night we would have 500 or 600 people up there looking to play basketball, right? And there, it got to the point where it was just too much for any one person to handle. And the individual who was trying to organize it, it just got too big on them, right? So before you know it, we had an incident, right? An unfortunate incident, individual lost his life. But we knew, I won't say we saw it coming, but you could feel that something, we were not hoping it was going to be something that tragic, but you could almost sense that something was going to happen. And unfortunately it did. And then I reacted, right? Because I reacted the way that, I was hearing from my residents, and I gave the park a timeout. Whether that was wrong or whether that was right, depending on which side of the aisle you were on, I still, to this day, believe that, I made the hoops inoperable, for just about a week's period of time. The previous administration didn't want me to do that, but my residents wanted it, right? It just basically gave everybody a time to regroup, take a time out.
Kind of a cooling off.
Just cooling off period. Let's figure this out. And that ended up leading to a lot of a collaboration between myself, the city, the congregations got involved, and we were working on how are we going to make the park usable the way that it should be used, as opposed to being overrun, right? So in the midst of planning this whole thing, we had another unfortunate incident where another individual lost their life. And that one was just completely random. Nobody saw that coming at all. And not saying that the basketball courts were the cause of these, right? The events just happened to take place at the basketball courts.
Yeah.
So we had a tough decision to make in Ward 16, and that was, do we get rid of the basketball hoops, or do we try to use them for what they were supposed to be used for, right? And then in doing some of my research, I realized that the city of Cleveland had never had an organized outdoor summer basketball league, right? So I partnered with the congregation from the neighborhood, I partnered with the city of Cleveland, and I partnered with Impact Youth Sports. And we decided that we were gonna come up with the first outdoor organized basketball league for individuals, not kids, not youth, but individuals. So, but we didn't want to just host a league, right? We wanted these people who were going to be playing in this league to be there for the right reason, right? So they had to earn their way onto the court. And I don't mean by skill-wise. So what they had to do was they had to go through working in collaboration with some elders in the ward, and the churches. They had to go through classes, 6 hours of educational training, conflict resolution, sportsmanship, just a number of things that you would have to learn that you could use while you're on the court, right? So we wanted to educate them on life skills, but also how to react and not react when something doesn't go your way when you're on the court. And then aside from that, they had to do outreach in the community. So Jefferson Park is a unique park because it is completely surrounded by houses, right? So it's almost like you took this park and you dumped it in the middle of a neighborhood. And the residents over there are very passionate about the park too. So we wanted to make sure that all these individuals who were going to be playing in the park, in this league, got to know the residents as well, and that the residents got to know them, so that it looked more like a community and a collaboration than somebody just coming in to use the park, right?
Well, that's interesting because that makes sense. You call it the Revolutionary Minds Summer League,
right? Exactly, and that's what it. We need to take our youth who participated in it, and we needed them to come up with a different philosophy and a way of thinking when it comes to not only interacting with each other, but outside of that too, right? Interacting with a community, interacting with people that don't look like them, and having the people who live there interact with people who don't live there, right? So it was a hugely successful, I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better kickoff year, right? So we had over 125 individuals participate in the basketball league. We had some Cavs players show up periodically, and it went for 6 weeks. And then what we had to do was, okay, now that it was over, how do we maintain that good momentum? And the work that we did on the front end with getting the kids to know the neighbors and letting the neighbors know the kid was really what made that transition smooth. And we haven't had an issue since that, and we've totally changed the perception of the park, going from those 2 unfortunate incidents to something as positive as this.
Very positive. So you probably took away some great takeaways from this first league. How do you see it growing? How do you see it changing, being more impactful in the community?
So it's comical because I've already had colleagues say, hey, listen, we want this over in our wards, right? We need to put this in other parts of the city. And what's interesting about it is that other parts of the city are known for, outdoor basketball or something like that. We weren't, right? We just, we believe one of the reasons that Jefferson became such the basketball hub was because Lakewood shut theirs down, right? And when Lakewood shut theirs down, Jefferson Park is the furthest basketball court west of the city. So aside from Jefferson Park, any further west you go, you don't find another court until you get into probably Fairview. And now, since Lakewood opened theirs back up, so it became this overpopulated spot. But going forward, we look to grow the numbers. But just because they went through the league the first time, anybody who ever joins the league is always going to have to do that front end work first to get on the court. And, to see residents sitting out on their porches just watching it, because it was almost like a show, right? Because there was music involved, there was an announcer that was involved. So, you heard what was going on. So, you could be cutting your grass or sitting on your porch and you could still hear the announcer announcing what's happening on this, in the court. And it was, It was such a great experience.
And I think I saw an example of that when I covered your safety fair this past summer. I remember they were out there. They had the announcer, the music, and they were putting on almost like a clinic there.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting.
Yeah. So talk about turning lemons into lemonade. And it could have totally went the other way.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we could have totally said no, get rid of the hoops, we're done, get out of here, and But that's not what we should do as a community, right? We needed to do this, and it was a healing thing for not only the kids who were there during the tragic incidents, but it was also a healing thing for the residents who live around the park too. That what, it's okay. It's okay to have people out there playing, and it's not always going to be something tragic. And this was a really. When I leave council, it's probably one of the most proudest things that I would have accomplished.
Amazing, simply amazing. Let's look at another asset in your ward, and that's Cleveland Public Library's Rockport branch. I understand it's one of the busiest branches in the library, and I also understand it's going through a big upgrade too.
Yes, so depending on who you ask or when you ask them, it's either number 1 or 2 most used Cleveland Public Library in the city. So Rockport got a little bit of a makeover probably about 5 or 6 years ago. Then obviously the issue passed for the libraries, and what they're going to do now is they're tearing the Rockport down, and we're going to build a new Rockport branch library. But what we're doing is we're leaving the old one open until the new one is built. So we're actually moving the physical site, even though it's right next door to it. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of openness on the corner of West 140th and Puritas, because the current one kind of sits back a little and to the north. So we're moving the library more. Modernized library is going to be up on the corner of 140th and Puritas. And then once that is open, then they'll close the other one and go for demolition. But with this new one, we're going to have an expanded children's area and teen space. We have one of the only Best Buy teen tech centers where there's a lot of technology that goes on there. And there's going to be 24 access materials to grab and go book lockers. We're going to have a lot more community space there. We're going to have improved technology and accessibility. We did a lot of work with the community to see what the community would like to see in their in their new library, and then the collaboration with Cleveland Public Library to take that feedback and incorporate it into this. It's going to be one of the crown jewels.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I know it's good you have them both open too, because when you lose a library, even for a bit of time, it leaves a void. Libraries can also be a safe haven for kids coming home from school, a place to go do your work until someone gets home too.
Yeah, well, West 140th is not branded the way that as well as it should be in the city of Cleveland, because that's the city's educational corridor, right? There's about a 1.5 mile from Puritas to Lorain. And within that 1.5 miles, we have Garfield Elementary, Artemis Ward, John Marshall High School. We have Birchwood of Hawken, which is a private school. The previous ones are CMSD. Then we have a private school, Birchwood of Hawken. Then we have a brand new Rockport library that's going to be going on. And then within the next year and a half, we'll be opening the Lyric Center, which is going to be sitting almost right across the street from John Marshall, which is going to be a teen hub center as well, where kids can go there and do any of the teen programming that our Community Development Corporation does now. They'll have their own home for that as well. So within a 1.5 mile, you've got 4 schools, a brand new library, a community center. It really is, it's the heart of Ward 16.
Sure is. Looking at some of the programs, I talked about this, or I mentioned this before we did our show, but the SASSY program. Tell me about SASSY.
So SASSY is, you've often heard me say at the table, Ward 16, we get along. We kind of just exist, right? We're not sexy, right? We're not overbearing. We're the type of ward that just wants to get up in the morning, go to work, come home, have our trash picked up, streets paved, if we need the police to show up. So it came about one day where I was holding a community meeting and Council President Blaine Griffin showed up, and one of our residents asked the Council President to explain me how I am downtown. And he got this little perplexed look on his face, and he says, he's a little prickly, right? he can be a little prickly. And some lady out there says, he's not prickly. Don't call our councilman prickly. He may be sassy, but he ain't prickly. So I said, you know what? That really is what Ward 16 is, right? We're a little sassy. And I don't mean sassy as in like how you would mean sassy. Ward 16 is strong, affordable, safe, stable, and youth-oriented, right? So we took that sassiness and we put it into how do we in Ward 16, how are we sassy? And we don't mean we're sassy by we're prickly, right? We mean we're sassy because we're strong, affordable, safe, stable, youth-oriented, and it just kind of it picked on from there. So there's people running around with shirts that Ward 16 is sassy. They want to start a sassy club, which is basically just a block club that just wants to kind of oversee the whole ward. And it's just it was a way that the residents are coming together to, say they're sassy, but not be sassy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it really has caught on in the neighborhood. And it's
great marketing too.
Yeah. And you know what? If you come to Ward 16, just know that we're sassy.
We're sassy. And we're proud of it.
Yeah, and we're extremely proud of being sassy.
What are some of the issues facing your ward right now that's on the top of your list?
So, Ward 16 has been so strong and stable for so many years that one of the things is that people think that how would I put this? People think that we don't need anything, right? And Ward 16 is not a needful ward, but what it does is it needs a hug. Right, it just it kind of looks the same. One of the things that we have in Ward 16 are legacy villages, right? These shopping centers that were built in the 1960s, they're owned by 40 different people because 2 people built them and they left them to their kids and they left them to their kids and da 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 da. And these people are no longer locally, here in the city. We have one legacy village or legacy plaza that's owned by 18 people, and not one of them live here. right? But because we're so strong with our development over there and our economic development, these plazas are still full. So, we've got people sitting back in Maine and Texas and wherever they're sitting, just collecting their royalty checks every month from their rent and not actually paying attention to the shape of the buildings, right? So what we really need is we just need a facelift, right? It just kind of looks the same because it's always looked the same, and it's okay. People are okay with that because we're not dealing with blight or abandoned, storefronts or anything like that. It's kind of okay for people, but it's also to the point where it's like we need a facelift, right?
Yeah,
we need just a little bit of attention. We're not asking for much, right? Because we don't need much, and I'd much rather see those resources go to other portions of the city that need it. But we also can't be forgotten, and that's very difficult to sell to the administration, to other members of council, because we're not as needy as other portions of the city.
One thing you talked about is coming together, and you do an event every year, the Haunted Hollow, which is I've been there before. It's a big event. Talk about that and how it's great in bringing your community together.
Yeah. So Haunted Hollow, I've been doing me personally been doing Haunted Hollows for about a little over 20 years, and it started way before I was ever on council. My son was probably 3 or 4. My wife took him out trick-or-treating, and I was all excited. I'm sitting on the front porch, and I got my candy, and I'm ready to pass it out. My wife takes my son down the street to go trick-or-treating, and no trick-or-treaters. I was like, we got to do something about this, right? I mean, Halloween is such a cool time of the year with the fall kicking in and everything. So I decided that I was going to host an event that would give kids in the neighborhood a safe way to go trick-or-treating. Now, when I became a councilman, I brought this event up here, and it has just exploded, right? So Haunted Hollow always occurs from 6 to 8 p.m. the first Friday before, or the Friday before Halloween. No matter when Halloween falls on, we always do the Friday beforehand. And it's basically a safe way for kids in the neighborhood to get together and go trick-or-treating. And what it is we get vendors. We Jefferson Park, right? There's a walking oval at Jefferson Park. We get anywhere from 50 to 75 volunteer vendors who come out, set their tables up. Kids line up. They get to go trick-or-treating. They get to go through a haunted maze. We have a hayride. We show a movie. There's all kinds of. We basically turn the park into a haunted park for the day, and it's comical because I theme it every year, right? And I never tell anybody the theme until the flyer comes out, right? And right around the beginning of September is when we start getting the phone calls. Hey, what's the theme for Haunted Hollow this year? What's the theme for Haunted Hollow this year? But the good thing about the event is that, it's from 6 to 8, last to 9 or whatever. But we do anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 kids.
Amazing.
And they come in, they do their trick-or-treating, they get their hayride, they watch a little bit of the movie, they carve their pumpkins, they go see all the displays that are up, and everybody has a good time.
It is a great time, and I think it's great too. I'm sure you've seen vendors and sponsors just come in eager to put up a table just so they can promote their services, their programs, things like that too.
Yeah. It's really become a fun thing to do with the vendors as well, because we have to cap it sometimes, right? So sometimes we got to tell people, you didn't call us in time, or you didn't get back to us in time, and we can only do so many tables. We only have so many tables. And if you think about it, if we do 50 to 75 vendors, right? So if every vendor gives out just one piece of candy, that's 50 to 75 pieces of candy. So the kids are happy, or if they give out 2, that's a good chunk of candy. The parents are overly happy because it's so organized, right? It's not like your kids are running off here. There's a starting point, there's an ending point. You only go in a circle. There's only certain ways you can go. So the kids get to experience that whole Halloween concept, and the parents love it because it's so organized, right? And everybody gets out of it what they need.
I like it a lot. Anything our viewers should know about Ward 16 that they may not know?
Aside from us being sassy?
Yeah, besides me being sassy, yeah.
It really does come down to that. Ward 16 is strong. We have a good housing base. You know, we not a lot of housing turnover. We're affordable. We're still one of the most affordable places in the city. For what you get, for what you pay for, is still a bargain. Still one of the safest neighborhoods in the city. Our stability isn't going to go anywhere. We really concentrate on the youth because eventually those youth are going to be the ones that are going to take care of us. But the one thing that people really don't realize about Ward 16 is probably our international cuisine, right? We have the Himalayan restaurant. We have right at the corner of 130th and Lorraine, you can get Italian, you know, with Cafe Roma. You can get German with Der Braumeister. You can get, you know, Eastern cuisine with Himalayan. Right up the street, we have one of the biggest stable places that's been there for the longest, which is American Diner. It's George's Kitchen. You know, we have Canaries. You know, we have Mount Everest, which is another Eastern cuisine. We have El Halaj, which is, you know, another restaurant. So I mean, no matter what type of food that you may want, you can actually find it in Ward 16. Right. That's one of the interesting facts that not a lot of people know.
Well, if people want more information on Ward 16 or how they can get a hold of you, where can they go?
So you can always call the office. I never discourage anybody from calling the office, 216-664-2942. You can get a hold of me through the Cleveland City Council website. Or Ward 16, we actually have our own website as well, where you can find out events and meetings and stuff like that. And that's www.clevelandward16.com.
All right, Councilman Brian Kazy, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Excuse me, we learned a lot about Ward 16, and we learned that Ward 16 is sassy. Now, if you don't know what sassy means, stop on over to the community, talk to some of the people. They'll tell you what sassy means. Thank you so much for watching. This is Catching Up with Council. I'm Dan Monroe, and we'll see you next time.